Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my October reading wrap-up. In the month of October, I read 6 books and 1 short story. Out of those books, 5 of them were audiobooks and 2 were physical. I had quite an interesting month because I had such an urge to read, but I kept not finding the time to. Either I was dedicating my time to writing, or a few times I just wanted to play some video games with my friends, and work has been pretty outrageously crazy. I've been having the weirdest cases I've ever had as a therapist. So they've been keeping me on my toes, and overall that's just made for a pretty rough reading month. But I did just get this sweet hat, and I'm obsessed with it. I bought it because I wanted to embrace my witchy vibes for Halloween, and now I just think I'm going to wear it everywhere. But hat aside, I'm going to get into the books that I read. In the month of October, I started and finished the entire Raven cycle. The Raven cycle is the Raven Boys, the Dream Thieves, Blue Lily, Lily Blue, and the Raven King. And then I also finished the short story Opal that follows all of those books. So if you're not familiar with the series, and to be honest, when I started the series, I really didn't know anything about it. The premise is that there are 4 boys who go to this academy, and they are kind of nicknamed the Raven Boys because the raven is their school symbol. So the 4 boys are kind of all friends and intertwined for various reasons. They all have pretty distinct personalities, but they're all kind of tied by this ley line which runs across Henrietta, where they all live. There's also Blue, who is a non-psychic in a family of psychics, and she kind of has this one power where she's able to amplify the psychic gifts of others, but she herself is not psychic. Blue ends up getting mixed in with these Raven Boys once she realizes that one of them is destined to die in the next year. She doesn't really know who it is and what their purpose is yet or why they die, but eventually she ends up meeting all of them, and they kind of end up forming this little gang who are set out upon this whole adventure. I don't really think any more of the story is worth telling because I went into it pretty much completely blind. I had no idea it was set in our world. I had no idea it was about psychics and things. So that's all that I would want to share. And I think that if you're interested in it, that's how you should go into it, because the first book was very good. So as far as my ratings go, I gave The Raven Boys, book 1, a 4-star. The Dream Thieves, 5 stars. Blue Lily, Lily Blue, 3 stars. And The Raven King, 4 stars. Overall, I think the first 2 books were so strong in my opinion, and the second book built upon the first one so well, and it just blew me out of the water. I was completely obsessed with the first 2, and it just grabbed me in. The third book kind of wavered a little bit for me, and I'm still not really sure what I could say to pinpoint why I didn't like it. But the one thing I would say is it's definitely the shortest book of all of them, and I just felt like for the majority of the book, nothing really happened. And then a lot of things happened towards the end, but for me, it wasn't enough to kind of redeem it overall. I still gave it 3 stars. It was a good book overall. Like, it's not something, if I really hated it, I probably would have given it a 1 or 2, but solid 3, and I kind of felt that was more of a bridge book for book 4. Book 4 I ended up giving 4 stars. Again, I really liked a lot of parts of it, but I felt that there were some storylines and plot lines that just either drifted off and never came back, or were wrapped up so quickly that I really didn't have time to appreciate or sit with it. So by the time the end of the book happened, a lot of those little things just made me sad that they either just never came back, or I thought they were going to have a bigger role and they didn't. But I still really enjoyed the whole book, and the ending was very bittersweet for me. So that was a 4-star. The short story actually was one of my favorite things out of the whole trilogy as well. It's on audiobook. It's about an hour long. And so, short story, you probably read it even faster. But it was about one of the dream characters, and it was really, really good. So if you finish those, I highly recommend reading the short story. I think if you get a copy of the Raven King, it is in the back of that book, but don't quote me on that. I think my one friend told me that it was in the back of her copy. I listened to the audiobook on Scribd, so it was just available to me to listen to, so I did. So the next book that I finished in the month of October was Five Dark Fates. This book took me so long to get through and I was so devastated. So if you watched any of my videos, I did a reading vlog earlier in the month and this was one of the books I was trying to finish. And I think I did finish it in that reading vlog, but I had started this in September and I just was trying to get through it, and life kept happening, so I didn't get to it till about mid-month. So this book is the fourth and final in a series. It's the Three Dark Crowns. I can't remember. Queens of Fenburn, I think that's the series collection name. But Three Dark Crowns is the first book. This is the fourth. So again, the book is about three sisters who are grown up and groomed to be pitted against each other, which is a tradition on the island of Fenburn where they live. So every time a new generation is born, it's always three sisters and they all have different magical gifts for the most part. Sometimes some are born giftless, sometimes they're born with the sight gift of like seeing the future and they're drowned. They have the war gift, which is sometimes known as to be unstable. Elemental magic, naturalist, which is kind of good with herbs and animals, and then you have poisoners. The queens can have any of those 5 powers. Our queens there's a poisoner, a naturalist, and an elementalist, and they are separated pretty young so that they can be trained in their magic, so that when they come of age, they can essentially go kill each other for the throne. So this is the 4th book. I can't really say much about it, but to be honest, I actually gave this 5 stars. I thought it was a very solid ending to the series. It's very slow pace, and the thing that I would say about this book is there's a lot of like little peaks. So you think things are going somewhere and then it kind of levels out. And then you think some things are going somewhere and it levels out. And then you get to the end and it's like in your face, like this is what happens. You don't even have time to process things. But I think it worked very well for me, and it was kind of messy, but in a good way. I would highly recommend this series. Overall, it was pretty close to being 5 stars for every single book. So if you get your hands on this, I highly recommend it. And I also think for fall, this is probably a good read. So if you are looking for some kind of fall going into winter vibes, this is pretty dark and it's good for this time of year. So the last book I read in the month of October was A River of Royal Blood by Amanda Joy. Now, this book, it just came out on October 9th, and if you are able to get your hands on it, go get your hands on it. It was incredible for a debut. This, to be honest, is one of those debuts that I just felt like the author, you can tell she had poured so much of her heart and soul to make it the best possible, and she had several years that she tried to get her feet off the ground with it, and I think that shows from a writer to a writer. I think the world was very well done. Unfortunately, the arc didn't have a map in it, so I like to actually, when they're talking about places, I like to kind of flip back and forth to the map to kind of visualize them better. But what I will say is she does a very good job describing the world that I really didn't need the map, which I think shows a lot for writing, because as a fantasy writer myself, trying to describe worlds and like where things are is tricky sometimes. I also think that the magic system was incredibly interesting. So let me tell you a little bit about this book since I skipped right over that. So essentially you're following Eva, who is the youngest daughter of 2 girls. And in this world, very similar to the Three Dark Crowns series, when the daughters both come of age, they are set against each other and they're supposed to kill each other to the death in order to vie for the throne. So they don't actually get the throne immediately. The predecessor has to abdicate first, so their mother in this case would have to step down, and then whoever wins the blood battle will take over for the mother at that point. Essentially, they are supposed to kill each other, and Eva is approaching her name day where she is going to be of age to start the battle for the throne. So the battle doesn't have an end date. It can take as many years or just a few hours to kill your sibling. But the cool thing about this is you're kind of looking at the journey leading up to this. So you kind of learn about the history of the world as well as Eva's history and the family's secrets that they keep. And what I'll tell you is this is one of those books where not all is as it seems. So getting back to the magic system, where I thought this was really cool. So there are 4 races in this book. There are humans, fae, bloodkins, which are kind of like vampires, and chimere, which are these kind of humanoid creatures with animal features. So each race has a different type of magic and how they are expressed. So humans have this unstable magic, so they get tattoos that are put on their skin when they're 9 years old that helps them bind their magic to be able to wield it better. You have chimere who have this kind of innate magic, and the fae who have glamour magic, and the bloodkins who have blood magic. So they all kind of have different sorts of magic but are still similar in the way that they manifest. I think the magic system, which is a huge part of this book, was very well done. There was a few times where I thought it was a little weird or it was convenient for the plot, but otherwise, like, I really didn't have a problem with it. I also really liked how they visualize their magic. They kind of have this place that they go in their head to kind of visualize it, and it's very descriptive and beautiful, and I just love that whole aspect. As far as any gripes, it's hard to say because, to be honest, like, I just really liked this book a lot, and it's hard for me to find faults with it. I'm sure other people could, but the one thing I would say is that there are two characters introduced that Eva could essentially consider a love interest. They're both kind of introduced early on in the book, and the one character that Eva meets is someone that I actually thought they had a decent chemistry with, and I could tell as a fellow writer that I knew this isn't the person that she was going to end up with, but I really liked their chemistry. And it wasn't something that I think was bad in any way, that like they didn't end up together and I was like mad about it. But I almost thought that it could have been such a good love triangle. And I don't say that often because love triangles can so often be poorly done. But I think it would have been such a cool and complex way. And I honestly think this author could have gone after that and done it successfully. Because the other person that could have been the love interest, who ended up being the love interest, was also well done. And I think they had such distinct personalities and they meshed so well with Eva that, like I said, it just could have been an interesting love triangle dynamic. So if you're not a fan of love triangles, that's not in this book, at least. That might be some way to entice you to get it. But I really did like both of the character dynamics that were introduced. And like I said, while it could be a gripe, it's not really a gripe. So the other thing about the relationship in it is a slow burn romance. So if you like that in books, this is probably a good one for you. The thing that makes it not as slow burn for me is that the relationship is culminated over several months. However, a lot of those months we're being told that time is passing. So you're not actually seeing it unfold. So it'll be like, this happened. And then, all this crazy stuff happened. And then it's like, a few weeks later or a few months later. So you kind of like, you're being told that time's passing, which in theory makes sense. If you're looking at like a slow burn, then yes, all this time is passing and they are taking their relationship really slow. But on page, it doesn't necessarily translate like that because you are just being told it and you're not seeing them progress as deeply as one could. But like I said, this is a debut and I think it's like 300 some pages. 352 pages. So in 352 pages, I do think the romance is pretty slow because really things don't happen until like the good last chunk of the book. So that's another thing. If you're interested in slow burn romances, I would definitely say this is good. But overall, it has magic, assassination attempts, love, and just a good complex world and backstory. I'm a sucker for backstory, and you get that in here. So I'm raving about this book, but it's so worth it. I would recommend 10/10, 5 stars. Go get your hands on it. It is out now. So if you do end up picking it up, please let me know what you think of it and if you were as hyped as I was to read it. So that's all the books I read, and I think I went through them pretty fast, which might be to your benefit. I'm not sure. But if you watched my reading vlog as well as my TBR video from last month, my wrap-up / TBR video, I kind of talked about these books more, so I really didn't want to repeat myself. What I will mention is that I am currently in the middle of 2 books. The first is Living Dead in Dallas by Charlaine Harris. This is the second book in the Sookie Stackhouse series. I'm really, really not far into it, but I just picked it up because after reading a lot of the heavy fantasy books, I just decided I wanted something fun again. Plus, I'm starting NaNoWriMo, so I wanted something that I really didn't have to give a lot of mind to, and I figured this was going to be worthwhile. The other book I started was Ninth House by Lee Bardugo. So I'm also not too far into this book, and the only thing I will say right now is that the beginning of it is really dense. There's a lot of information thrown at you without explanation right now, and I'm assuming that was a choice so that you would learn things as time goes on. But it was making it very hard to get into just because I had no idea what was happening. It's very interesting at the same time because it's like this kind of cult society at Yale. So I do want to read it, but I think this is going to be more of a when I'm in the mood to pick it up again, I'm going to read it again. So it's probably not going to be my more consistent read of the month while I'm doing NaNoWriMo. But I also think it would be a good choice because it's kind of completely separate from my contemporary novel that I'm writing. So I think, if anything, I am going to stick to reading these two books in the month of November, if I read it all, and we'll see how that goes. I don't have a TBR officially for the rest of the month because I am mostly pouring my focus into NaNoWriMo. But anyway, those are the books I read for the month of October. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and hopefully you are going to be excited for my NaNoWriMo videos coming up. I will be posting my first vlog video on Tuesday, which is, I think, November 5th. So be on the lookout for that, and otherwise I will talk to you guys next time in my next video. Bye.